Alright, Paul Wooten here, WRF Customs. Welcome back to my channel. Been sitting here trying to decide how to get back into the my life story of collecting. So I had to back up and listen to some of my other video, just kind of remember where I left off. But I had noticed that I had forgot to mention that I was also into building plastic models. Did trucks and vans and what have you. Did a lot of planes, military planes. With my dad being in the military, I did all the fighter jets, A-10s, F-4s, F-15s. Did the KC-135s. Did the B-52s. Had all of them hanging from my ceiling in my bedroom by in fighting positions and refueling positions or whatever. It was pretty cool. So then, once I moved to Tennessee and I graduated and all that good stuff, I was really into started getting the NASCAR. Of course, I was coming to the South after living everywhere in my life, and pretty much if you lived in Tennessee or in the South, if you wasn't in the NASCAR, there was something wrong with you. So I had quickly already had a favorite driver. I was already following Davey Allison because I really liked the kid, and he was in the Tesco Havoline, and that seemed like where I was filled up with gas, so it just seemed fitting. But coming from a family that was majority of Chevrolet General Motors family, for me to pick a driver that was Ford was just kind of taboo. But that's what I did, and even though at the time I didn't even own a Ford, my first vehicle was a uh, Plymouth Trail Duster. It was a 1978 Plymouth Trail Duster, which is the same thing as a Dodge Ram Charger. And just this piece wasn't available back then, but being that I mentioned that particular truck, Greenlight started producing Plymouth Trail Dusters, and they also have a Dodge Ram Charger also. And the top comes off of this truck, and it was my first truck that I bought. Mine was actually green and white, and I haven't done a custom of that yet. I need to. I was hoping Greenlight would come out with that variation. But anyway, so that was my first vehicle, being a Plymouth, first Chrysler product basically in the family. Um, so I had it a while, and then what did I do? Okay, then that thing didn't last very long. I had an old weak 318 in it. For some reason, it was already wore out when I got it. I get $500 for it, so you can't expect much. Started once I graduated, I needed a really handy vehicle, so my dad and future stepmother at the time, well, she was, yeah, had decided they was going to surprise me and go ahead and get me a truck, but I had to pay for it. So they got me a little 1987 Toyota pickup truck. So I'm like, why didn't you get me a Chevy something? I said, this is the best we could do. So anyway, I get it. Of course, I had to redneck it out. I put CB radio, big whip antennas on it, put the NASCAR numbers on it, stuff. Even had a Hot Wheel sticker on it, believe it or not. So had it for a good long time, and started collecting the Hot Wheels NASCAR stuff. They called it the Pro Circuit. They had the NASCAR stuff. They had some Indy stuff, some drag racing stuff. So I'd pick up a few different pieces here and there, and just did my whole lot. Didn't have really no place to put it. Moved in with my dad. Built a room down in their basement. Lined up, put all my diecast stuff in there, and displayed all my NASCAR stuff. All my NASCAR stuff basically was in a little 15 or 20 gallon fish tank. That's what I had all my diecast stuff in. That's how much stuff I had at the time back in the early 90's. So had this Toyota. Decided that I needed a little bit different, a little bit better truck. went and got me a Ford Ranger. Shortly after that, I got wrecked. It wrecked. I had 10 miles on it, and somebody hit me in the rear end and wrecked it. But so anyway, I got all that fixed and stuff, and I was on the CB radio and happened to meet my current wife on the CB radio. And fortunately, she had 2 young kids, 2 and 3 years old. So that kind of, when we started dating, they started getting into Hot Wheels and all that kind of stuff. So that re-sparked the thing. But what we ended up collecting the most of was the NASCAR stuff and ball cards. That's what my son was into wanting to collect, because he found on mine that I had. So we collected together. He was 3, so he already knew, a little bit about cars and what have you. So so about the same time, I have a new truck, a new girlfriend, 2 young ones. Ended up getting a new job, and all that kind of fell together all at one time. So fast forward, we're getting into the middle 90's. My son finds my old Hot Wheels and has them spread everywhere. Luckily, he didn't find the mint ones, but he found some of my older ones. Found them in his toolbox. I mean, his toolbox, his toy box, and said, "Why did you get into my Hot Wheels, Dad? I want to play with them." So I said, "Son, we need to go and get you some you can play with." I said, "These other ones need to be put up." These were my childhood cars. I had some that were beaters, and luckily that's the ones he got. So at that time, we was buying NASCAR stuff and what have you, and he couldn't get the concept of saving stuff in the package. So of course, I said, "Son, keep this safe, and we won't open it up. Let's just look at it." He couldn't get that concept. It wasn't no time in these, which today they're worth nothing, but the NASCAR sets and stuff, he'd tear them open, play with them. All that was good. We started doing flea markets and buying more cars and buying my cars, and before you know it, we've got totes of Hot Wheels and NASCAR stuff, and a little bit of Matchbox that we collected together. And so we didn't really have a lot of place to store this stuff, so it all stayed out in my shed mainly. So in '99, we buy a house, and this is the house, and we had this huge basement. It was finished, carpeted, totally looked different than what we got now. So slowly it started transgressing into this hobby room for me and my son. And so we collected throughout the years, but realistically, NASCAR was what we collected. Got a really good buddy of mine lives in this town. One day I'm gonna take a video of his shop. I mean, he has got NASCAR. He's got basically a 2-story building, and it's plumb full of diecasts of all kinds: NASCAR, Hot Wheels, Matchbox. I mean, you name it, he's pretty much got it. And I've had almost everything he's got in his building in my house and collection at one time also, because I was buying a lot of my stuff from him. And so we're getting into, through all that NASCAR time, collecting everything. I mean, I'll show you. I don't know who's interested in NASCAR stuff, but I will do a video on my NASCAR stuff. But back in the day, you could you'd have a race, whoever you followed in NASCAR, um, Action was pretty much who had most of the NASCAR stuff, and your driver would have like one sponsor for the whole year. It would be Tetsuko Havoline or whatever, and then they would do like a special paint job for the Winston and for the shootout. So you'd have basically 3 cars to buy a year. Well, it got to the point where the drivers were changing, getting 4 and 5 sponsors and changing them up so much you couldn't afford to buy a $50, $60. Well, back then that was almost $70 for a 124 scale series diecast, and of course you could buy the 164 scale, which were about $6, but um, I liked the bigger stuff first. I mean, better. So that kind of got out of hand, and about that time is when me and my son decided, let's get back into the Hot Wheels. Kind of left the NASCAR stuff alone, even though we collected all the Hot Wheel NASCAR through all the 90's. They had all the different boats and the buses and um, all the different series of. I'm looking on South Texas Diecast right now, real quick, but they had what they call the NASCAR mainline. They did the teed off, the Dragon Wagon, the Suburban, the Scorching Scooter, the go kart, the hydroplane, the chopper, the school bus, the T-Bucket, GNC motorhome, the Pontiac Grand Prix, the Blimp, the Twin Mill, the Way Too Fast, the Demon, the Diora, the Tail Gunner, which was the pickup truck, the Angela Panel, the Big Chill Snowmobile, the Tail Dragger. They did a bunch of the Tail Dragger. The Rig Wreckers, which they did a bunch of the different racetracks on the Wreckers, the T-Birds, the Phantom, the Limousine, the Hooligan, the Roadster. So we collected all those. The Bass Boat, the ATV, the Dodge. They did a couple of Dodge Rams, the Ford F-150, the Custom 69 Chevy, the Hammered Coupe, the motor coaches they did. This is all into the 2000, 2003. Still to this day, it's so hard to find. They did the 57 Chevys. They did the Terry Labonte Frosted Flakes 57 Chevy, the UAW Delphi for Jerry Nadeau, the Square D for Bobby Hamilton, and the one that is really, really rare, if you can find it, it's friggin' unreal. I've seen it, but I've never been able to own it, is the Mike Skinner Kodak number 4. It's $100 if you can find that, and it's very rare. I don't know. Something was a disagreement with Kodak, and they decided to pull it and they didn't want it sold anymore. So still after that one, won't pay the money for it, but so here we are up in the early 2000s. But I'm gonna back up just a hair. As much as Miss Sasha is in this deal, she will be 13 years old in November, and this is what she looked like when we brought her home. I don't know if that's gonna focus or not. Well, that didn't work too well. Anyway, maybe I'll try that in another episode. But anyway, we adopted her, and she's been the canine Hot Wheels dog from that point forward. She's guarded this area against intruders, against anybody. But so this may have been the most boring part of this series, but my next series is going to get into the point where I started going to the Hot Wheels conventions after doing local shows here in my area, starting a club, all that good stuff. And from this point forward, to me, is the most exciting part of my the diecast career, I guess you would say it. But yeah, this was kind of a boring section, kind of the in between. Knew most of you guys don't care much about NASCAR, but hey, that was part of it. But NASCAR was huge. I probably still got 100, 200 pieces of NASCAR that are displayed within my shop here. So hope it didn't put y'all to sleep. Had a good weekend, and we'll get back to you guys. And appreciate everybody watching. Appreciate everybody hanging in there. Thumbs up when you can. We'll roll on.